Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. It's Friday, so let's have some fun on TGIF, end of the week, and reflect on what we've done with the video series. You do know that I was motivated to begin this series for chiefly because of the COVID operation, because all of my bicycle racing activities were canceled because you couldn't get a permit. Counties and cities would not issue permits for bicycle racing or events. That meant that insurance can't be issued and sold, which means you can't have an event, which means that my primary means for training and focusing and pursuing competitive activities was terminated. So it's canceled. It's part of canceled culture. And then when I realized that COVID basically just pulled the curtain back, like the Wizard of Oz, the little dog Toto pulled the curtain back at the wizard to reveal that the wizard was a little old man on a stepladder pulling the levers, and that there really was no banking system, there was no learned MBAs from Harvard or Stanford who had any authority whatsoever over the psych ops, psych out, that is our banking system. So please don't take Wall Street seriously, don't take stocks and bonds seriously, don't take derivative products seriously, which are put and call options if you didn't know. Don't take anything that people wearing expensive shoes and suits have to say, what comes out of their pie hole. I would ignore it. They're either personally clueless or they're lying deliberately on purpose, and they're getting paid to lie. That includes all Hollywood actors that are gainfully employed with a Screen Actors Guild card. It's not just having a Screen Actors Guild card, you have to be employed. There are lots of folks that are holders of Screen Actor Guild's cards, but they're more or less inactive. So they're not part of the army that is the military, CIA, Hollywood. Anyway, so I wanted to do these videos because we couldn't speak about the COVID operation. So I tried to talk about historical events, things that happened, during the 1900s that have proven to be false, things that were reported in the newspapers, the radio, television, that were false. And there's never been any apologies issued by the media, and they cling on to those original stories as becoming part of fake history and included in the textbooks for your children at elementary, high school, and universities, which pretty much torpedoes the whole idea of the value of a university education. It's an indoctrination process. It can get you a corporate jobs in one of the college of corporations. But if you want to be successful in business, you most certainly don't need to go to university. Absolutely not. They don't teach you anything there how to succeed. And the professors there are all indoctrinated themselves, so they're fairly clueless as well. And believe me, any actual talented person who wants to teach at a university will be hamstringed and frustrated. And of course, for example, I would like to teach at a university, but I object to the books. I think the books are based on false premises. They're untrue. They're impractical. So that's a problem, because my students would their grades would be dependent on memorizing and repeating what the textbook read. And since I don't agree with the textbook, that puts me right in the bullseye of a non-compliant professor at the university. It's the same problem we have with our medical system, because guess what? They've already decided what all the diagnoses is that a human being that comes into a doctor's office could possibly have. So the doctor doesn't decide your diagnosis. The government has already decided that, which is code for the banks, because we have no government. So a banker has decided what is your diagnosis. The doctor knows how to get paid. That's all they really know. And they know that some diagnoses pay more than others. So they're always looking to upgrade your diagnosis into something that will pay them more money. So you have a very corrupted, dysfunctional militarized medical system. We have a militarized indoctrination education system. And so I wanted to talk about, the Sharon Tate murders, and I want to talk about the Zodiac. Those are my first two. And then I wanted to delve into William Colby, who was just the director of CIA, to take over the very odious Richard Helms, who bungled and botched the Watergate series of break-ins, because I think there were at least 3 burglaries. And if you listen to Bob Woodward, I think he'll tell you there was one. But, Bob Woodward is part of the Navy intelligence clandestine services, so I wouldn't believe anything he says, because he's a proven pathological liar, pants on fire person. So you're not going to get any truth out of the Washington Post or anyone who was affiliated with it at any time ever. That includes Seymour Hersh, that includes Carl Bernstein, that includes all their fake, phony, reporters over there. All right, so before I drift a little bit further, I just wanted to tell you it's Friday, so I wanted to get some things off my chest. You have to have a thick skin to produce content, because you do get, haters chiming in. The main thing is, we know that the clandestine services, the bank anthropologists, they wish to divide our society amongst religion, amongst race, amongst masking, amongst COVID vaccinations, across all areas: transgender, human rights, feminism, women's rights. I mean, I've lost track of all the dividing topics. I'm not interested in any of that stuff. I recognize it for what it is. It's a military tactical approach to weaken a society that can rise up and conquer the ruling class, which is a tiny little group of perverts. It's a very small group of perverted, mostly men. I mean, they have recruited and conscripted women as well. And shame on you women who have participated, because you're going to get rounded up in the same railroad cars that the men are. So I don't think you're going to have any enjoyment. Because when justice is meted out, and someday justice will be meted out, there's not going to be a lot of distinction about that you didn't know. I mean, that's pretty clear that everybody denies that they knew that they were participating in a crimes against humanity. Right? So anyway, I went on this journey and draw out the haters. They try to trick me into, Jew versus Gentile, and to paint me as anti-Semite. They've ignored that half my videos, probably over 100, I am trash talking the Roman Catholic Church and the Jesuits, which the last time I checked, that's not Judaism, it's Christianity. So what's funny is I'm an anti-Semite who is very anti-Christianity. So anyway, it doesn't really matter. I get in trouble no matter what I say. That's the point. That's why I'm the only content of my kind. I'm not looking for a large audience. See, if I was looking for a large audience, my content would sound like Dr. Drew Pinsky, the Jewish radio, television, fake doctor, Dr. Drew. He's vaxxed, boosted, but he understands that you're not, and he understands there could be adverse reactions. He talks out of both sides of his mouth. He's trying to maximize the size of his audience. He's a Jewish social engineer. To be ignored. Dr. Drew. Goodbye, Dr. Drew. Go the way of Dr. Laura Schlesinger. Get off television. Same with you. Same with you, Howard Stern. Take a hike. Get lost. Nobody cares about your ridiculous, stupid radio show. All right, so I'm going to give you an example of 10 military soldiers and what happened to them or their children. As examples, I tried to use the Sharon Tate murder as an example of how wrong the media was by blaming Charlie Manson, whose real name is Miles Maddox. They didn't even get his name correct. But you see, it's lost on most people. They don't know that they're being lied to, which is pretty hard to believe, which explains why people wear masks or drive around in their cars alone wearing a face diaper, is that they're mentally disabled. So you're not going to save those people. They're dead already. Anyway, my mother used to call that tough love. You just have to assert some tough love and understand that many of your neighbors that you know or you thought you knew, they're going to go to a different place than you are. If you're listening to this video, you're less than 1% of your population, and you're going to go to a different place. Now, maybe that'll be a prison camp, or perhaps maybe it'll be a chateau looking down at FEMA camps where most of your neighbors live. Because it's kind of true right now. Because when I first examined Los Angeles, specifically Hollywood, Beverly Hills, Bel Air, I was enthralled by the whole thing. And I had a friend, Kurt, I won't give his last name. His parents lived in Beverly Hills. Kurt attended Beverly Hills High School, then University of California, USC. Then he worked for a premier international CPA firm. I was in the San Francisco office. He was in the Century City Beverly Hills office. We met at a training conference, became fast friends. Every time I went down to Los Angeles, he would take me to dinner. He would show me around. Or sometimes I would take him to dinner because I was out of town on business and I could charge it on my expense report. And he would give me a tour of Beverly Hills, Coldwater Canyon, Franklin Canyon, Truesdale Estates. He showed me where Benedict Canyon was. We went up to Cielo Drive, which is really easy to do. However, you should know, people, that using a car to tour Beverly Hills and these enclaves, these cul-de-sacs, is not the best way to do it. And in fact, I don't recommend it at all. You'll miss 90% of what's there. The very best way to tour military complexes is by bicycle. Walking's not going to work because we're talking about miles and miles and miles of cul-de-sacs. So a bicycle is more efficient. And see, if you're not physically fit and you don't have the conditioning, you're not going to enjoy it. So it takes a combination of high level of physical fitness and skill, because you're going to be on a hillside. It's always going to be going up and then coming down. So you need skills so you don't wreck. You're on narrow roads with no center lines, and there is automobile traffic, and you could get hurt. Now, the next best way is probably scooter or motorcycle. That's not as good as bicycling. Bicycling is silent. You draw no attention to yourself. You are caught on the surveillance cameras, but there's not going to be, I've never had a reaction from a surveillance camera ever on a bicycle. All right, so what I'm going to tell you is bicycle's number one. So fortunately for me, that worked out perfectly for me to come back with my bicycle and do my own personal research, because I'm not going to tie up my friend Kurt's day to look at a lot of these places like 7708 Woodrow Wilson Drive, where Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner lived for a while. Anyway, the more I learned or unearthed when I picked up the rock and looked underneath with Hollywood, the more disturbing it became, and the more I understood that I didn't understand. Kurt did tell me right up front in Beverly Hills when we had dinner, I forget which restaurant we went to. We went to a really nice Italian restaurant. And he told me, when I asked him, what's the deal with Hollywood and Beverly Hills? He just said, nothing that you think you know about the entertainment industry or Hollywood or the music industry or film or television, nothing that you know is correct. Nothing. Like zero. Zero. Because Kurt's father was an entertainment lawyer. And Kurt's a CPA for an international accounting firm in Beverly Hills. So, why would I not believe him? I mean, he told me he's going to save me some time because you won't waste time with all the cover stories. See, that's how you solve the Sharon Tate murder, is you just forget about what you think you know about the case and then just investigate it straight up on your own. Look at the evidence, what little evidence there's available, and, go out and get an M7 NATO bayonet and stick, pineapples and watermelons and cantaloupes with this, and then examine the wound patterns, and then look at the photographs of the medical exam for Sharon Tate. You'll have the same pattern, okay? You don't need Thomas Noguchi to tell you what you can watch with your own eyes. You certainly don't need Walter Cronkite to lie to you. You do your own research, and then you'll get the truth. All right? Now, that's not going to answer all your questions. I understand that, but it's a good starting point. Most of the people that think they're experts on the Sharon Tate murder, which includes Tom O'Neill and his ridiculous book, Chaos. It's a great name. It's a CIA operation name. Then he has Manson in there because he knows that'll help sell the book. There is no Manson. There's Maddox. So Tom O'Neill got the name wrong. But who cares, right? He's pandering to the same clueless audience. He's trying to maintain the subterfuge. Tom O'Neill is getting paid money to keep you away from the truth. There are aspects of his book that are interesting, but he doesn't go anywhere near the murder of Sharon Tate. Doesn't go anywhere near that in that book. So that book does not explain the murder of Sharon Tate. He also doesn't link Lino LaBianca and Rosemary LaBianca. He doesn't discuss them whatsoever. And that's extremely telling, because they're an essential part of the NATO murder. And people who think they know about the Sharon Tate murder, they don't know jack about Lino LaBianca, who was a military policeman and had 5 grocery stores plus a wholesale produce business and owned 11 racehorses and lived in the Walt Disney Mansion in Griffith Park. If you don't know that, you don't know jack. You should keep your lips zipped that you think you know something about the Sharon Tate murder. If you don't know anything about the LaBiancas and the Straight Satans and Danny DiCarlo and Joe Dorgan, if you don't know who those people are, if you don't know who Phil Kaufman is, and is really important, Harold True. If you don't know who Harold True is, get off my channel. Get off my channel. You're not qualified to discuss anything related to the drug business in Los Angeles, or money laundering, or Hollywood social engineering, or Robert Kennedy's assassination, or Benedict Canyon, or Laurel Canyon, or Coldwater Canyon. Get off my channel. All right. Hollywood and banking and Sand Hill Road in Menlo Park, Stanford University, University of California Systems, 9 campuses at least, Harvard University, MIT, Princeton, Yale, Columbia University. These are military facilities. They're all structured in a militarized way. The banks are divisions and departments and sub-units, units within the departments, within the division. There's a whole hierarchical chain of command, not unlike a submarine. Compartmentalized. Need to know basis. Security clearances required. They may not be called security clearances. They're just sort of called pay grades. In other words, I was taken aside to the Knights of Malta clubhouse, and given an elaborate lunch at 10:30 a.m. in the morning by two partners of an international CPA firm that told me that I was operating above my pay grade, that I was a cathedral builder, and that I was looking at the architect's plans and the civil engineer's comments when I was hired to be a bricklayer. So I was operating above my pay grade. I think that was code for don't go into Grand Cayman money laundering accounting again, ever, without permission. And of course, I'm never going to get permission to go in there. So you got to be able to understand the message, which will be nonverbal. Okay? And I have people who have made comments that I don't, answer all the questions. I had one nincompoop tell me that the street addresses of properties are not helpful. Well, I blocked him because you know what? They're extremely helpful. They're extremely helpful. He was saying they're unhelpful. Just tell us what the motive was. What, you want me to reveal my sources? You want me to name names? You want me to get people killed? You want me to invite my own demise? Get off my channel, okay? My audience who subscribes to my channel is highly intelligent. They can put that last piece together. The motives become quite clear when you understand the geography, the locations, the people, what they were doing, that were under maritime law, military code of ethics, obedience, chain of command, code of secrecy, and there's some kind of world mission or some kind of a job mission, and that is the overwhelming management policy for everyone that works within a military system. Includes our courts, our county superior courts, which are completely militarized under maritime law. There are no law of the land courts in America. None. And if you find a judge that says otherwise, ignore them because they're lying. They're lying. All right, so I'm going to give you some examples here. We're 22 minutes in of people who weren't military per se, but were working within the military construct because our enemy is the system. John Kennedy told us that it's guerrillas by night, not armies by day. And yet we are opposed by a monolithic force, military force, in banking, in health, in education, in politics, in the fake government, with the fake leaders like Ron DeSantis, like Gavin Newsom, like Dianne Goldman Feinstein, like Nancy Pelosi, like the cackling cacophony of chaos Kamala Harris, like sleepy Joe Biden, like Donald Trump. These are people to be totally ignored. They have no authority, they're incapable of telling the truth, and they are reading a script at the point of a bayonet. So don't believe what Donald Trump says. He's a liar. He's always been a liar, okay? And so is Joe Biden, okay? We're not selling used cars, okay? We're talking about life and death. So do not listen to liars. Ben Siegel is my first example. Ben Siegel was born in Brooklyn. He was raised in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And he was shot 9 times with a military M1 carbine, 30 caliber, on June 20th, 1947. He's Jewish. He was Jewish from Brooklyn. Raised in Manhattan, Lower East Side. Dead at age 41 in Beverly Hills, California. 90210. Murdered at 810 Linden Drive. Three houses from Howard Hughes' plane crash in a United States Army spy plane who was attempting to land on the golf course of the Los Angeles Country Club, just next to the Playboy Mansion, which hadn't been opened in 1945 when that plane crash happened. Second example of a military soldier, Sam Giancana, who was born in Chicago, And Sam Giancana performed a variety of tasks for the clandestine services. All these people work for the CIA or OSS. Now, they'll tell you that they work for organized crime or the mafia. There is no organized crime. There is only the clandestine military intelligence, okay? The Hells Angels were part of Air Force intelligence, okay? The Black Panthers, the SLA, Symbionese Liberation Army, the Church of Synanon, the People's Temple with Jim Jones, those are all military organizations, 100%. They're not lone nuts. They're military structured, and they're bank funded. They all have private bankers that make sure the bills get paid. Anyway, Sam Giancana was murdered in his basement kitchenette by a person who he knew, who he had just cooked dinner for. That was on June 19th, 1975. Sam Giancana shot, I don't know, like 7-8 times in his face, so you couldn't do an open casket funeral. Age 67. Okay? He's Italian. Then we have Meyer Lansky. He died at age 80 in Miami. Meyer Lansky, not his real name. He's Jewish. He was raised in Lower East Side Manhattan. Personal friends with Ben Siegel. And Meyer Lansky lived, till 1983. January 15th, 1983. He died of natural causes at age 80. Then we have Santo Trafficante Jr. He died at age 72 in Tampa, Florida. He was, he died in Houston to get bypass heart surgery, and then they transferred him back to Tampa, Florida for his interment. He died on March 17th, 1987 at age 72, whilst he was going to get heart surgery in Houston, Texas. Then we have Carlos Marcello, one of the world's most successful tomato salesmen. Carlos Marcello was Sicilian, but he was born in Tunisia, and he only had Tunisia citizenship. They cooked up some fake Guatemalan citizenship for him, but it was forged. He was born in French Tunisia. He died in New Orleans on March 3rd, 1993 at the age of 83. Then we have Paul Pelosi. Paul Pelosi lives in Pacific Heights, San Francisco. He was indoctrinated into the CIA through the Jesuits, through St. Ignatius de Loyola High School. And Paul Pelosi was involved with the death of his older brother David when he was 16 years old. His brother David was 19 years old when he was killed. Paul Pelosi went on to be a private banker in San Francisco after Abigail Folger was murdered by the M7 bayonet, and Inés Mejia, her mother, was shunted aside. Enter the picture Paul Pelosi. And he's still alive last I checked. He's going to have his 83rd birthday in 2 weeks on March 15th, filing date. So Paul Pelosi is still 82. He's had a very scary last year of his life, torpedoing Jesus Lopez on Highway 29, almost killing him and himself in a $220,000 Porsche Carrera, which Paul Pelosi is not capable of driving that car, especially not drunk. And then involving himself with a styrofoam hammer attack in Pacific Heights, and now getting David LaPoppe in federal court. I think they have it reversed. It's Paul Pelosi that should be charged for felonious crimes in federal court. They should be giving David LaPoppe some kind of like the Congressional Medal of Honor, since he committed no crime. And Paul Pelosi doesn't even live in that house. You do realize he lives one block up the hill at the corner of Divisadero and Pacific Avenue. He doesn't live on Broadway. That home doesn't have a view of the Golden Gate Bridge. The home at the top of the hill does. People are so easy to fool. Anyway, so what I'm saying is Paul Pelosi was controlled and compromised after the death of his brother. And we have Paul Tate, Sharon Tate's creepy father. So his daughter gets murdered by the M7 bayonet at age 26. That keeps Paul Tate under control. All right, we got Ines Mejia. Her daughter Abigail is murdered at age 25. That keeps Ines Mejia following the oath of silence, right? Oath of secrecy. Then we have Lewis Brown Jr., who's the father to Nicole Brown Simpson. He's a spy pilot. He pimps his daughter out to the Daisy, and he doesn't object to her living with a married man whose wife is pregnant. So he thinks that's okay. That's Lou Brown. And then she ends up getting hacked in an Operation Gladio style to death at age 35. Nicole Brown, dead at 35. Then we have John Bennett Ramsey. John Bennett Ramsey. He's the CEO of Advanced Product Group and Access Graphics, which is purchased and becomes a division of Lockheed Martin. John Ramsey is the father to John Benet Ramsey, who's pimped out for beauty pageants in the exact same way that Sharon Tate was pimped out by Paul and Doris Tate. They pimped their daughter out the same as John Bennett Ramsey pimped his daughter out as a cult ritual of the clandestine services, Lockheed. So his daughter is garroted, asphyxiated at age 6 in Boulder, Colorado, down by his wine cellar on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day evening. Right? So that's 10. That's 10 clandestine service soldiers. We had Ben Siegel and Sam Giancana, who were murdered personally. And then we had Paul Pelosi had a brother murdered. Paul Tate had a daughter murdered. Ines Mejia had a daughter murdered. Lou Brown had his daughter murdered. John Bennett Ramsey had his daughter murdered. So 5 out of the 10 had their family members murdered. Not them. Family members. That's half. And then on the other half, 2 were murdered personally. That's 20%. And I'm left with Meyer Lansky, Santo Tropicante, and Carlos Marcello, who died natural deaths. That's 30%. So I got 30% of the people who are soldiers for the clandestine services have natural deaths. But most people do not. 70% do not. Anyway, thought you'd get a kick out of that because, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? All right. Have a great day. Take care. Happy Friday. TGIF to you. Please like, subscribe, and share my videos. I am Shadow Band.